During the harsh winters of World War II, soldiers weren't just battling the enemy, they were fighting the cold itself. On the Eastern Front, temperatures often plunged below -40 degrees Celsius, and entire units froze to death overnight when the cold overwhelmed their makeshift tents and thin blankets. But among the ruins, the chaos, and the endless snow, a forgotten survival method emerged, one that turned the enemy itself, the snow, into an ally. This technique transformed soft snow into a thermal shield so powerful that it could trap heat, block wind, and keep soldiers alive through blizzards that would have killed unprepared men in just a few hours. Before diving into the details of this incredible lost method, make sure to subscribe to In the Beginning, where forgotten wartime survival tactics and historical innovations are brought back to life, tested and explained for the modern world. When snow was no longer an obstacle, but a weapon for survival. By 1942, both Axis and Soviet troops found themselves in conditions they were never trained for. Vehicles froze in place, machine oil turned solid, and shelter canvas ripped under the weight of ice. Wooden huts and tents were impossible to heat without drawing enemy fire, and, frostbite became as deadly as gunfire. It was during these months that frontline engineers and mountain divisions rediscovered an ancient Arctic method, the snow trench shelter, later adapted into what some soldiers called the White Fortress. The principle was simple, yet, honestly, kind of brilliant. Instead of fighting the snow, use it. Soldiers learned that compacted snow, when properly shaped, acted as a natural insulator. A wall just half a metre thick could block freezing winds and trap radiant body heat. Entire platoons began to carve sleeping chambers directly into snowbanks, building tunnel-like shelters that used the snow's own structure to maintain internal warmth. Unlike tents, which, radiated heat outward and froze over from condensation, these snow fortresses kept a consistent interior temperature around -1 to 0 degrees Celsius, even when the outside temperature dropped below -40 degrees. In the brutal Eastern campaigns, that difference often meant the line between frostbite and survival. The process of building these shelters was, honestly, surprisingly methodical. The first step was to find a stable snowbank, at least waist deep, ideally a drift that had already hardened from wind and pressure. Loose, powdery snow was useless. It had to be compacted until it could hold shape when cut. Once a compact layer was ready, they carved out a narrow tunnel leading into a small, hollowed-out chamber. The key was to make the entrance lower than the sleeping area. This trapped warm air inside and prevented cold air from flowing directly in. The ceiling was smoothed and slightly domed to prevent condensation from dripping onto the occupants. In many units, soldiers lined the floor with pine boughs, dry straw, or even uniform fabric to insulate their bodies from direct contact with frozen surfaces. They would then light a single candle or small oil lamp inside, not for light, but for heat. Thanks to the insulating properties of packed snow, that single flame could raise the internal temperature by several degrees, enough to prevent frostbite through the night. At first glance, the idea of sleeping inside snow sounds suicidal. But the science behind it is solid. Snow is about 90% trapped air. Those tiny air pockets slow down the transfer of heat, making snow a surprisingly effective insulator. When packed and shaped correctly, it reflects the body's radiant heat back inward, creating a small, self-heating chamber. Canvas tents, on the other hand, allow constant airflow and heat loss. Even when heated with stoves, they lose warmth rapidly and cause condensation that freezes on the fabric. The snow fortress flipped this problem entirely. There was no wind penetration, no flapping canvas, and no radiant loss. Soldiers reported sleeping more comfortably inside snow shelters than in tents when temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. This method proved especially vital for mountain troops, Finnish soldiers and Soviet partisans operating behind enemy lines. In some divisions, constructing a snow fortress became standard practice for winter bivouacs. Manuals even began circulating among certain units, describing the precise ratios. Walls at least 40 centimetres thick, ceilings no more than 20 centimetres high, and entrance tunnels angled 15 degrees downward. Modern survivalists and winter campers can still apply these wartime lessons. A simple snow shelter can be built in less than an hour with minimal tools. The key steps remain the same. Find a dense snowbank or drift, compact the surface, carve a low-entrance tunnel, and hollow out a chamber just large enough for your body and gear. So, the smaller the volume, the easier it is to heat. Always keep a vent hole at the top for airflow, about 2 to 3 inches wide, to prevent carbon dioxide build-up. You should line the floor with a sleeping pad pine needles or even a spare jacket to avoid direct contact with ice. Once sealed, your body heat alone will gradually warm the air inside, keeping it well above the outside temperature. In survival conditions, honestly, this could easily mean the difference between life and death. Interestingly enough, the same method is used by Arctic explorers and winter soldiers today, often under the name Quinzhee or snow cave. Yet few realize it was perfected in wartime by desperate men carving life out of snow with frozen hands and bayonets. The snow fortress method symbolized something profound about wartime ingenuity. In the face of conditions no one was prepared for, soldiers rediscovered what ancient Arctic cultures already knew, that nature's most feared elements could also be its greatest protectors when understood. This lost technique wasn't just about survival, it was about adaptation. Soldiers didn't have advanced gear, down sleeping bags, or modern thermal clothing. What they had was knowledge, passed in whispers and field experiments that transformed frozen ground into refuge. That's why this story still matters today. It's a testament to human resilience and the ability to outthink nature rather than just endure it. As history enthusiasts and survivalists, there's something deeply valuable in revisiting these forgotten methods. They teach us that survival doesn't come from gadgets, but from understanding the materials around us. A man with the right knowledge can turn even snow, a symbol of deathly cold, into a shield of warmth. For anyone serious about cold weather survival, learning the snow fortress technique is more than a historical curiosity. It's a skill worth keeping alive. It works, it's sustainable, and it's been tested under the worst conditions imaginable. If you value rediscovering real wartime innovations that proved humanity's toughness and ingenuity, subscribe to In the Beginning. Share this with others who appreciate forgotten history and field-tested survival knowledge. These are not myths or reenactments. They're the practical lessons of men who faced the impossible and found a way to endure it.